Ladies and gentlemen, the Senior Bowl has come and gone. So what better time than now for a post-Senior Bowl mock draft coming up next. Back. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your friend Dom C, co-host of the Draft Dodgers here on Project Prospect. And man, what a week. My favorite week of the year, probably next to Christmas, is the Senior Bowl weekend. You know what? It did not disappoint. The weather was fabulous. The attendance was fabulous. There was a lot of, great players up, down, left, and right, and just a lot of buzz, man. The draft season is really upon us. So, just hopping on the bandwagon, and it's time to, address some of the changes that we hear or we see in the draft order, at least where some of these guys are going to go. So let's do a post-Senior Bowl mock draft. But before we do that, let me make sure that I remind everyone, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to Project Prospect with Dom C. Feel free to leave comments in the video. We'll communicate with you. It helps the algorithm, does everything we can to give you the best draft content 24/7. But without further ado, my esteemed co-host, Mr. Tigo. Tigo, how are you, buddy?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm well, man. I'm well. Like I said, first full day back. I got back Friday night late and then was up early Saturday morning. I had to drive down to South Jersey, about 2 hours away. My daughter had a gymnastics competition, came home, kind of just settled down. And today was the first day back to reality, if you will. So I'm feeling good, man. How are you?
I'm great. Just powering through, hanging out, just enjoying life, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I know you weren't there, but real quick, tell me what your overall take from the 2024 Senior Bowl.
I felt like the Senior Bowl, I feel like I say this every year, but I really feel like this Senior Bowl has been like the best one that I've been of the ones that I've been watching, just in terms of just sheer talent of players that are there. You always, at least in previous years, you always seem like there's like one or two guys that like everyone's got their eyes on. And then it's just like, then they all dip out day one. You didn't really get that this year. Yeah, there were guys who didn't participate in the game, and I respect that. But like, so many guys stuck it out all 3 days, so many guys stuck it out all 3 days and then played in the game. And we really got to see like best on best reps, which was really good. And it just was overall just a really, really cool week of just really, really good tape for a lot of guys and helping answer some questions for a lot of guys, like, I don't know. I love the Senior Bowl. I'm very jealous that I was not able to go there this week, obviously, this past week with you guys up there, but I know that you guys did all you could to get as much content as possible. And I made sure I got my hands on every single rep to make sure I watched those guys' tapes. And boy, has it changed the perspective, especially going into this draft.
Yeah, this is, I think Jeff Ulbrich said it best when, he was at the podium day one, and he said, this is really the start of draft season, and to an extent, I understand what he's saying. Like now everything's ramped up, because now, there's risers, there's fallers, and all that stuff. We're not going to get into our opinions on that stuff, but the buzz is around on some of these guys. The buzz is good, and some buzz is bad, and there's going to be a lot of changes. So why not throw a mock out there and get our feelers out there first?
There's definitely some guys that have like played themselves as potential first rounders, towards the bottom half, and there are people that have played themselves out of those spots. So it's really interesting to see how, I don't think the top of the board is going to change all that much, but from picks, let's say 16 to 32 is going to be wildly different, in my opinion, just because of Senior Bowl performances.
I couldn't agree more. So without further ado, let's get this started. But before we do that, let's lay out the parameters for everyone watching or listening. This is going to be one round, all 32 teams. We will throw in the additional picks for Carolina and for Cleveland. And there's going to be no trades. And I have let's see if I can do this. Share screen. Let's pull up this random number generator. I'm going to give you the honors. You want odds or evens? Odds.
Give me the odds.
So if this is an odd, you're going to get to choose odds or evens. And if this is an even, I'm going to get to choose odds or evens. So we will stop in it's an even and I win it. And I'm going to go ahead and stay with the evens. And I'm going to give you the honor here. So let me take this off. Bada boom. And let's add this. Bada bing. And Tigo, my friend, you are up with the Chicago Bears.
Yep.
With their, I almost said new head coach, but he's not.
No, not new head coach.
Is
new
there
offensive
again.
Coordinator Shane
Correct.
Waldron, coming from Seattle and that staff. I think they made this hire knowing exactly what they were going to do. I think they're moving on from Justin Fields. Shane Waldron definitely is the type of guy that I believe you bring in to bolster your offensive production and to develop a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what they're going to do. And I'm just going to take Caleb Williams at the top. Again, this is a predictive draft.
I forgot to say that.
Do. He's still not QB1 on my board, but I think he's going to be QB1 on a lot of people's boards. And Chicago is going to take Caleb Williams in the first overall pick.
Yeah, and he is the best quarterback in my opinion, but I digress, and that leaves me
behind only Drake May. I agree.
I leave that leaves me with Washington. New head coach Dan Quinn, new offensive coordinator just found out. Cliff Kingsbury has spurned the Raiders and is moving east to overtake. Now, listen, I know we're not doing trades on this, but man. I mean, if the cards aren't stacked for a trade up to one so they get their hands on Caleb Williams, knowing that Cliff Kingsbury has coached him, was the offensive coordinator at USC, knowing that Caleb Williams is a hometown kid in the Baltimore area, grew up Washington Redskins fan, this all lines up perfectly for a trade up to number one and get their hands on Caleb Williams. But with no trades, I'm going to digress. And again, this is not what we would do. This is what we're predicting is going to happen. And with that, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to throw a curveball in here right away, but man, Jaden Daniels running that Cliff Kingsbury offense would be something special. But I don't think I'm going to shy off of Drake May. I'm going to let Drake May kind of follow the footsteps of Sam Howell from Carolina to Washington, and he's a fit, and he would be a fit in Kingsbury offense. He's mobile enough. He's more athletic than people give him credit for. Like I said, I'm not. It's that maybe not the pick I would make. Drake May to me still at times, runs out of clean pockets and gets a little, gets those happy feet. Gives me the Sam Darnold vibes. But I digress.
But Caleb doesn't? What are we talking about here?
Oh, no. Caleb's a different animal than Drake May. I think they're two completely different quarterbacks.
Yeah, they are.
Drake May is going to be the pick here for Washington as they set their new regime up to win. And that leaves you at New England at number 3.
New head coach, obviously going to be a whole new staff in New England with Gerard Mayo, Bill Belichick ending his tenure there. Now, this is still an interesting conversation because, do you pass up on the wide receiver knowing that you're probably going to still pick in the top of the second round and you can get a quarterback there? I don't know if they're going to be able to do that and sell that to a fan base. I think they're going to have to. I don't have him graded this highly, but I think the next quarterback off the board is going to be Jaden Daniels going to New England. And while they still won't have any pass catchers there, and maybe they address that in the second round or in free agency, Jaden Daniels is essentially a running back in the quarterback position. So just hope that the offensive line in front of him can protect him long enough for him to find the pocket and escape when none of the wide receivers get open. But this makes sense.
Yeah, listen, I don't think you're giving Jaden Daniels enough credit, man. I think there was market improvement in visible, tangible improvement from his game from 22 to 23.
I'm not saying
I
that there isn't. I just
yeah,
don't have him as a top 10 quarterback.
yeah, I think he's shown that he's much more than just a runner. I think he's
That wasn't what
um
I wasn't trying to imply. I was just saying, like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
good that he's a runner because they don't have pass catchers. That was
gotcha.
more of the vibe. That wasn't me trying to say Jaden Daniels is not a passer. It was more, it's really good. He is so athletic and is such a good runner because they don't have any pass catchers.
Yeah.
So
That does make sense, and that puts me on the board. Listen, this is to me a no-brainer. It's not going to take much talking. I think he's probably, arguably, most definitely the best prospect in this class. Marvin Harrison Jr. Gives them everything they need on that outside. Gives little Kyler Murray a nice big target who's a smooth runner, good, does everything very well. I don't
yep.
know if Marvin Harrison's elite at anything, but he does everything at such, he does everything very, very well. I can't miss. I can't
Yep.
miss pick. If I'm predicting, I think this is the one that I'd bet my mortgage on happens. If Marvin Harrison's on board, he's going to the Cardinals.
Yeah, it
And
makes too much sense.
that leaves you up with another new head coach, offensive coordinator combo in the LA Chargers, right? Jim Harbaugh's back in town, and he called up his old buddy Greg Roman to run the show there. So, what are they
Yeah.
doing? What are they doing in LA?
I think the moment you brought in Harbaugh and then he then brought in, you know, you just said his name. Why am I
Greg
blanking?
Roman?
Greg Roman, you've committed to the run game. And I think that they're going to do big things to try to alleviate the pressure on Herbert. And I think the best way to do that is get a blocker and a pass catcher in Brock Bowers, the tight end. I think that this is, while that team was still in limbo of trying to figure out what they were going to do, you could have gone a bunch of different ways. Now that we know who's there, now that we know who's in town, Brock Bowers to Los Angeles just makes too much sense.
Yeah, no, it does, and I think it's going to put to rest any notions of, oh man, should another tight end go in the top 10? Listen, Brock Bowers is worth it. I love the fit. It's a position. Not only is it a position of need, but it's a position of even more need in an offense. Excuse me, in an offense run, being run by Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. They're gonna figure out a way to utilize him, and he can be utilized in so many different ways. I mean, Brock Bowers is he's him. He absolutely is him. So
I agree.
that leaves me on the clock with the Giants. And again, I don't think that there's much hesitation here. I'm not going to take I'm not going to take quarterback 4. I think that could be addressed later in the draft for the Giants. Plus, you're still semi-pot committed to Daniel Jones. Some people have been talking, or some people have been bantering around the idea of them taking another piece on the offensive line, which does need help.
Yep.
I can't see Joe Shane spending another top 10 pick on an offensive lineman. I don't, especially with having multiple second round picks and multiple day 3 picks. I think they'll be able to replenish or fill some holes between those picks and free agency. I just don't think you can let a talent like Malik Neighbors get off the board, especially when you have needs at the wide receivers. And Malik Neighbors can do just about anything. He's fast. He can separate. He can work inside, work outside. It doesn't really matter. Quick feet. Again, probably, arguably, would be wide receiver number 1 in any of the past 3 drafts. He just happens to be in the same draft with Marvin Harrison. So
Yep.
I don't have to think too much. That Malik Neighbors is going to be my pick.
Yeah, that's too easy. And I think that the Titans pick has alleviated or made itself more clear now with the hiring of Brian Callahan, obviously the former offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals coming into town. You seem like you've got the quarterback in Will Levis. You've got a really, really strong running game, and what you decide to do with bringing Derrick Henry back or not bringing Derrick Henry back. Tyjae Spears is a great piece there. But I think that coming from Cincinnati, I think the biggest thing he's going to bring with him is this idea of you cannot have too many weapons. We
Mm-hmm.
know DeAndre Hopkins is still going to be there. I know that a couple years ago they took Traylon Burks in the first round, and he hasn't panned up to it. But when you're looking at a guy like Romo Dunes adding into the mix there, giving Levis, who has a big arm, another target, while I understand the idea of maybe going on the offensive line again, I think what we've seen from Cincinnati is what? Prioritizing weapons over protection. If wide receivers get open faster than the defense can get to the quarterback, everybody wins. And I think that mentality is going to come with him from Cincinnati. So I'm sending Romo Dunze, the wide receiver, to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I think that's gaining a lot more traction. I've heard that same buzz, in and around other people that, that same pretty much exactly how you laid it out, that, that the blueprint was drawn out when Cincinnati chose Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell, when everyone knew and thought that they would be taking Penei Sewell. So maybe that, maybe some of that rubbed off, and like I said, it makes sense. The only thing I will say this, I'm not going to push back on the pick because I get it and I love it. The only pushback I will get is now you have Roma Dunze, who is an X build. He's probably nothing more than that. But you also have a kind of a redundant player in Traylon Burks.
But Burks, here's the thing, right? If you remember your scouting report for Burks back when he was in Arkansas, he excelled in the slot, not as an X. So now you can put him, you could theoretically run a 3 wide receiver set with DeAndre Hopkins as your X, right? Or move him around everywhere because he can. Then you can put Odunze as your X with Burks in the slot where he excelled at Arkansas. The best part of his game was playing as a big slot. So that was my thought process there, because I did agree, because now you got a 6'2" and a 6'3" wide receiver. You got a big wide receiver room. They're tall. They're all tall. 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" between the top 3 of them. But just go up and get it.
Yeah. Listen, I don't hate it.
And then I also think that Skoronski gets his shot at left tackle.
I don't know about that. And
they
trust
still
me,
need a left tackle, and they got one on the roster.
I am very much a fan of Peter Skoronski. If you remember last year, I had him as my number 1 rated offensive lineman. But I think that he has found his home at left guard. But listen, hey, I'm okay with them. I'm okay with them. I'm okay with them passing on a tackle here. In all honesty, because if there's nothing more that the Senior Bowl has shown us, is that there is depth at the tackle position, a lot deeper than I thought.
This is one of those picks that was affected by the Senior Bowl, because it was Joe Alt for so long. This pick, there's tackle depth. You can get one in the second round. So move on.
Yeah, and that leaves me up with Atlanta, another new head coach, offensive coordinator combo here. Listen, I would, not gonna lie, I would consider Romo Dunze if he was on the board here for Atlanta. They only have Drake London under contract after next season. He's the only wide receiver under contract. However, I'm not going to reach for a wide receiver 4 here. I think again, it's another position that carries a little bit more depth in the in the latter rounds, and Atlanta still has some picks to go. So I'm going to go ahead and flip, and I'm going to take the first defensive player off the board. And for me, it's going to be Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama. I think he can just hop in and fill Bud Dupree's spot, who's a unrestricted free agent. He rushes opposite Arnold Ebiketie, who is still coming into his own. I thought he was decent, but that defense needs a whole lot of work, especially with Raheem Morris in there now. He's probably going to want to put his hands in there and muddy up the waters and get the kind of guys that he wants. Atlanta has forever seems like they've been looking for that pass rusher, right? And Dallas Turner just might be that guy for them. So he's going to be the pick for me. So far, it's pretty chalky what we've done so far, with the exception of maybe the Tennessee pick. But I get it, and it makes sense. So now you're up with the Chicago Bears, who has already got their QB1 of the future in Caleb Williams.
It makes my pick really easy, right? Because the 2 players that I was looking at, or three players that I was looking at for the Bears here at 9 were one of the wide receivers in Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors making here. Neither one did. And then Dallas Turner and Jared Verse, who I have as like 1A, 1B in my class right now. And it makes it really easy for me because the last guy left, they need someone on the opposite side of Sweat. And that's just it. We're just going to get another edge rusher. We're going to put him there. And I think he's just so versatile in what he can do. And I think people are sleeping on him because obviously like the 2023 tape isn't as good as the 2022 tape. And I'm more willing to bank that 2022 Jared Verse is actually who he is versus the 2023, like trying to go back to win a national championship with his team kind of a thing and taking on a bigger role and bigger responsibilities. I think in a scheme where he is going to be second fiddle to Montez Sweat. The protections and all of that stuff is going to slide to Sweat, not to him. He's going to get back to getting one-on-ones and winning those one-on-ones at a consistent level. And it's just adding another piece to Chicago because everyone's job is on the line, right? Like everybody, even the new OC, everyone's job is on the line. So Eberflus has got to make sure that he turns that team around. And there's value at wide receiver, especially since you're going to be picking in the top of the round anyway, in the second round to go get a guy behind Moore.
No, they don't have a second round pick. They traded it for Montez Sweat.
Oh yeah, that was in this. I thought it was a third.
Nope, second for Montez Sweat. So their next pick is until 60 something, 60.
Still, you'll get a wide receiver in the third. This is a really, really deep wide receiver class.
Yeah, and that leaves me up with the Jets with a board that probably couldn't have fallen any better.
Really? Yeah.
Doesn't take much for me to run up what I think is hands down the best left tackle in this draft in Joe Walt.
Yep.
Definitely not as high of a ceiling as a guy like Oli Fashanu or probably even as Tyler Guyton, whose athleticism has, really, really, showed off in Mobile. But Joe Walt, you plug and play probably for the next 10 years on the left side. Minnesota's up.
Yeah. This is where, again, I think that the NFL evaluators are going to have a much higher grade on this player than you or I do. And this is one of those picks where if this happens, this is one I don't agree with. But we're trying to be predictive here. We're trying to be the in this situation. And even though I think you and I both agree that they're going to run it back with Kirk, like on another 1-year deal or something like that, I think they still go quarterback in this position so that they can't be held over the fire and all that stuff. And again, I don't have as high a grade on him as the rest of I think NFL evaluators do. And I think I see that from a lot of these mock drafts and these top 50 lists that I'm seeing from everywhere. But this feels like that JJ McCarthy spot, which again, I think is an overdraft for him on my board. But I think NFL evaluators are going to just fall in love with him for some reason and think he has I think he has sky high potential. I just don't think this is the value for him. But again, it's being predictive. And I think they have to take a quarterback. I think their team is too good to be in this position again. I think that's the problem.
Well, listen, I think that you're right to an extent. I think McCarthy's going to be the fourth quarterback off the board. This would be an interesting spot for him for sure. I happen to like JJ McCarthy a lot. I think that he's probably one of those guys that's going to be a better pro. I'd also wouldn't want to start him. So if I'm drafting JJ McCarthy, I'm going to have a veteran, whether it's a bridge quarterback or somebody that he can sit and learn for a year or two before handing the reins over to him. Again, the kid isn't even 21 years old yet.
And again, this is why it makes a ton of sense, right? It's just young kid who needs to sit and to develop and needs to learn. And you can't pass up on a talent like JJ McCarthy at this point, especially knowing like you've got the rest of the team. Not defensively, but like on offense, you have wide receiver 1 in the NFL. You've got a really good wide receiver 2 in Addison. So just run it back with Kirk. If Kirk was on that team, they make the playoffs and they probably get a little scary until they face the San Francisco 49ers or the Philadelphia Eagles. And then that's it.
Yeah. And that leaves me on the board with Denver. Again, predictive, not necessarily what I would do, but I don't see any avenue really, because you can correct me if I'm wrong if you can look this up, Tigo. I don't think Denver has a second round pick. I think that their next pick is in round 3. But I don't see any other avenue for them. If their plan is to move off of Russ, you got to go get a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna
And
go
they do
ahead.
not have a second.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna draft them Bo Nix. I think that Bo Nix is probably, if there's a scheme that he would fit best in, it would be there for Sean Payton. Bo Nix seems like, to me, I know this is a lazy comp, but whether it's size, mobility, just enough arm strength. It's not bad, but it's not it's not Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels arm strength. It's enough. I think that he's very Drew Brees esque in some of his movements and the way that he can run the offense. Now, I think he's probably a much better mobile quarterback than Bo Nix. To me, it's a play for Sean Payton to be able to, move on from Russ, which seems like that's inevitable. So, not my favorite quarterback. I don't have a first round grade on him. However,
I don't anymore.
Denver will be taking Bo Nix here, and you're up with the Raiders.
Yeah. The Raiders are a super interesting team here because a lot of things fell in certain ways. Obviously, promoting interim head coach Pierce to full-time head coach. And when you look at the Raiders statistically, after they fired McDaniel and they brought in Pierce to run the team didn't struggle offensively. They struggled defensively. Like, they couldn't stop a beach ball. And obviously, Aiden O'Connell is not the answer, but I think the Raiders are going to have to be in the veteran quarterback market, bring in a guy to be a bridge quarterback, and you have to address the defensive line. And staring down the barrel of a guy like Johnny Newton, who's so good, like, he's my highest graded interior defensive lineman, and he's the only one that I have with the first round grade. He's just so good, and having the opportunity to put him and Crosby and some of the other guys on the defensive line together, I think is something that you can't pass up on. And with no quarterback in this position that I feel comfortable with, like, even if Bo Nix was on the board, I wouldn't take Bo Nix. I think Jerjon Newton makes a ton of sense and is a really good fit for them, especially with the depth at offensive line. You can go get your aluminum replacement in the second round at right tackle.
Yeah, it's funny. Johnny Newton is one of those names who, by no fault of his own, has kind of like the buzz has kind of simmered down on him. Because everyone's talking about Byron Murphy and all these other guys. Darius Robinson, who blew up at the Senior Bowl, so on and so forth. So these are the names you're hearing, and people forget. Johnny Newton just keeps falling. I think at the combine, if he runs and he tests out, super athletic, this is the range where he's going to be kind of finding his home between 10 and 20. Yep. That's my opinion. So I'm up with the Saints. This takes no time whatsoever. The Saints are taking Olu Fashanu. They need the tackle help. And yeah, Fashanu's just it. I mean, he brings in, elite level mirroring and pass blocking, where he's still got a little bit of room to grow in regards to the run game, or finishing his blocks, or being more dominant, being more of a people mover. But listen, again, 21 years old, ball of clay, the highest ceiling of all the offensive linemen in this group. If he's here at the board, the Saints aren't going to hesitate. Olaf Schahn is a pick, and you're up with the Colts.
Yeah, and I think the Colts is a relatively easy pick for me. I know that you're not going to necessarily agree with this pick, but I think when you look at the Colts and what they need a DB. That's really what they need. And the most versatile one, who we don't know where he's going to play at the next level, is Cooper DeJean. I think he can play outside. I think he can play nickel. I think he can play safety. And the reality is that they need all three. They need an outside corner. Well, I think Cooper DeJean can do that. Well, if he can't, they need a safety. I think Cooper DeJean can do that. And so you're just going to get a guy who's insanely athletic, provides a ton of special teams value as well, and is just a Swiss Army knife for the defense in Cooper DeJean. And I'm not even going to look twice. You're going to find a home. He's a take the athlete, we'll find a home for him later kind of player. and he'll fit somewhere on that defense that needs help.
Yeah, listen, I get it. I get the fit. Like I said, not my favorite. He's not the cornerback that I would go with. But if you're looking for more of exactly like you said, that Swiss Army knife defensive back, there's probably no one better in this class than him. And that leaves me up with Seattle. And I don't think I have to really think too hard on the Seattle one again. I'm just looking. They are unrestricted free agent Damian Lewis, left guard, unrestricted free agent Evan Brown, their center, unrestricted free agent right guard Phil Haynes. Now they do have McClendon Curtis, who they picked up, who was a practice squad guy that they got off the Las Vegas roster. They did draft Oluwatimi last year in the 5th round, if I'm not mistaken. And maybe one of those guys can turn into something. But to me, I think the interior of this offensive line, especially for Mike McDonald, listen, the best way to, the best help to a young learning coach is a good solid run game. So to do that, I'm going to need to load up on that offensive line, and I'm going to take out of Washington Troy Fatnow. I know he's listed as tackle. I think he's probably going to find his home as a left guard with somebody, and definitely has the length at 34-inch and a quarter arms. He definitely has the length to play on the outside, but for now, you can plug him in at the left guard spot, or either guard spot for that matter. And just now have 3 really, really good pieces between Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas and Troy Fatnow. So I'm going to keep the kid from UW home in Washington, and you're up with Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville's an easy choice here, and I'm just going to take a lot of people's cornerback one in like Nate Wiggins. They need the DB help. I want to draft like another defensive lineman here, but you have Josh Allen, you have Walker. There isn't an interior defensive lineman that I feel comfortable here. I don't think you can take another first round edge at this point, like, because you still have to figure out what you're going to do with Walker, but create coverage sacks, right? Like, and I think a guy like Nate Wiggins can help be sticky and help elevate that defensive back. And like Darius Williams kind of played well last year. So like, let's just put talent on the DBs. Give Josh Allen a guy who should get the bag thrown at him, right? Just more time to get after it. Hopefully Walker can develop in year 3 into the first round pick that they thought he was. And that's it. I think an easy pick. You're on the clock with the Bengals.
And again, for the Jets, the board couldn't have fallen any better. And I don't think the board could have fallen any better for the Bengals either. And they're going to just pluck their Jonah Williams replacement in Talise Fuanga, the right tackle out of Oregon. He was one of the better, if not one of the best offensive linemen down at Mobile. And it was funny with him, like everyone had high expectations for him, and he lived up to them, and then some. Listen, was he perfect? No. Did he win every single rep? Close, but not every single rep. But I mean, he showed the dominant force that he could be. He showed his movement skills. He showed his ability to run block. He in the one-on-ones, he destroyed it. Couple reps with Latu just really stand out to me as just dominant wins from Talise Fuanga. So they would love the board to fall like this, and they got lucky. So you are up with the Rams.
Yeah, and I think the Rams is another one of those picks that kind of make itself in terms of, I'm just going to keep the LA kid in LA. You just talked about him in Liatu Latu. I did take a serious consideration and like a serious look at Terrion Arnold because I love they need the cornerback, but there are some second round corners that I think are going to provide a ton of value that might not sneak into the first rounds. Why am I blanking on every single corner in this draft right now? Why is it the only name I can think of is TJ Tampa? It's the only name I can think of, but you get the point, right? Your Quinyon Mitchells, who might be a first rounder, your teammate TJ Tampa, Kamari Lassiter's, Kalen King, those guys I think are going to be a good value. I don't think the edge value is there. So I'm going to keep the LA boy in LA and Liatu Latu. They need defensive line help. And I think that they can start loading up for another run, trying to take advantage of the last few years of Stafford, especially with the chef's kiss that they found in Puka Nakua, noted Tigo draft crush.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Latu's an interesting fit. I'd be curious to see how he lines up in this Rams defense. Again, they're going to have a new defense coordinator, so maybe they kind of adjust and do different things. But nonetheless, having him outside of rushing the quarterback opposite Byron Young would be ridiculous.
I just think about him coming up and over the shoulder of Aaron Donald. Like,
yeah.
You can't slide to Latu because you have to slide to Donald.
Yeah.
And so it just creates one-on-ones for Young and for Latu because Donald might need 4 guys to block him. So,
and that leaves me up on the clock with Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Pittsburgh can go a bunch of different ways. I think that offensive line is in play. I mean, they still have some holes to plug on the offensive line, on the interior, and at tackle. I think that, listen, wide receiver wouldn't be out of the question either, if you ask me. I think defensive back, they could use help all along that defensive backfield. Yeah,
maybe this sways your opinion, but don't forget they did just hire Arthur Smith as the new OC.
Yeah, that doesn't really sway me on much. This, to me, I think that I would love to see JJ McCarthy fall here and have him either sit behind or battle out with Kenny Pickett. I would love that. I would love that for them. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a guy who you briefly talked about before, who I think has absolutely, undoubtedly worked his way up into the first round. And this is probably the range that you're going to see him, maybe even a little higher. And that's Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell. Quinyon Mitchell was arguably the best player, one of the 2 best player, probably the best defensive player all week down in Senior Bowl. And it's funny, in Toledo, he played a lot of off man and, he showed his ridiculous ball skills, but people wanted to see what he could do against true Power 5 competition, mano y mano, and more so what he could do, pressed up in man. And, he showed up and showed out. And there was no buzz probably higher. Maybe Darius Robinson a little bit, but on the defensive side of the ball than Quinyon Mitchell. And I think he absolutely, I'm ready to write his name in ink in the first round. This is a perfect landing spot. You have him opposite of Joey Porter now on the outside in Pittsburgh. And, you're pretty much, you got young, studly, aggressive dogs on the outside. And that, to me, that's a recipe for success. So Quinyon Mitchell's the pick.
Yep. Miami is a very interesting situation here because I think you have to go interior of the offensive line. You're about to lose Hunt, right? And we don't know what Armstead is, but there isn't like a left tackle at this spot.
Connor Williams is injured too. He tore his ACL, right? So he's not even questionable.
He was, but like, this is where I get really, really interesting because Connor Williams, the pick that I want to make here and the pick that I think makes sense here is Jackson Powers Johnson, JPJ out of Oregon. Because if Williams comes back healthy, you put him in at left guard immediately. And he's played left guard at a really high level.
And Jackson Powers Johnson also played left guard at in Mobile, and I had a chance to talk to him. I interviewed him, and I asked him exactly that. I said, I saw you took some reps at guard. I said, was that the plan? And he said, no. He said, my plan was to come in here and just play center. He's like, but a lot of the teams were asking me if I was able to do so, and I wanted to show them that I was. He, in his own words, he's like, I wanted to show him that I'm the best interior offensive lineman in this country.
And I think he is. That being said, the value for me that you have to ask is, do you want a center that can play guard or a tackle or a guard that can play tackle? Like, which do you want the guy going from outside in or inside out? Because their offensive line has dealt with a ton of injuries. And I think the home for a guy like JC Latham at the NFL is going to be better served inside but he can play tackle if someone gets hurt, which for them always happens. So it's, do you want a setter that can play guard, or do you want a guard that can play tackle? I think I'm going to go Latham here, because I think the value of a guy, if Armstead or Jackson gets hurt, being able to say, well, JC Latham was a tackle in college, let's bump him outside and then adjust the interior accordingly. I think that's a better way to go. So I'm going to take JC Latham here with pick 21.
Okay. And that leaves me on the clock with the Eagles. And again, it's there's not much hesitation. To me, this pick screams Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia's always drafting a year ahead of what they need. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take right tackle Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. He's going to sit and he's going to learn behind Lane Johnson. And another guy who caught a lot of buzz down in Senior Bowl. He really showed up. There was a lot of reps that he lost, and he's still technically not sound yet. A lot hands on the outside. He's got to work on this hand placement, but the athletic parameters that he puts on, on the ground and on film are just through the roof. This is a guy whose ceiling, similar to Olu Fashanu's, is sky high, and I think he's the perfect fit for the Eagles. Let him learn behind Lane Johnson. If he comes back for a year, Lane comes back for a year or two, and then before you hand the reins over to Tyler Guyton.
Interesting. I would have gone corner here, because obviously they need to figure out what
they got
do.
They got 2 second-round picks. They can address that later. To me, this is another one that, outside of Harrison to the Cardinals, to me, this pick is probably makes the most sense. I think that Guyton's going to be the kind of athlete that that Howie Roseman wants in Philadelphia.
Interesting. I get to be the pick here with the Houston Texans using the Cleveland pick instead of their own, which worked out for them. They bet on themselves and they had a really, really good year. And I think that the pick that I'm going to make here, I think I'm going to take Terrion Arnold, the cornerback out of Alabama. I know that they have Derek Stingley, who they're big, big fans of. Huge year 2 for him with new head coach DeMeco Ryans running that defense. But I think that the offense wasn't the issue. The defense was, and you're a defensive head coach. And I think you've got a lot of depth on the edge there with Will Anderson, who you took number 3 overall last year, Grenard, who showed up in a big way. And if you can figure out a hodgepodge interior defensive line and as well use other picks to get into the interior of the defensive line, you can have a really, really good defense to match up with that high-flying offense led by C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, who showed up and showed that he was a wide receiver 1, Tank Dell, who was on his way to be getting Offensive Rookie of the Year votes before he got hurt. I think that it just makes a lot of sense. This has to be a defensive pick, so I'm taking Terrion Arnold.
Yeah, and Terrion Arnold probably shouldn't be on the board this low. So this is, this could be a home run for Houston. I love the pick, and I'm up with Dallas. And Dallas has Tyron Smith and Chuma Doga, as their depth at left tackle. Both are unrestricted free agents. It's an area that definitely is going to be addressed. Again, this being done in February, free agency hasn't really hit yet. So by the time the draft comes in April, they could have their left tackle already secured, whether they bring back Tyron Smith or address it in free agency elsewhere. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Armarius Mims, the tackle from Georgia. I know he played right tackle mostly in college, but I think that it's a matter of time. I think he's got the athletic chops. I think he's got the footwork. I mean, the super, super length, as big of a guy he is, to handle the left side. Again, not a guy I would ideally love to plug and play, but he's gonna hit some speed bumps along the way. But just looking at their depth chart and what's here on the board, to me, this is a fit that makes the most sense. I thought about wide receiver. I thought about the defensive line as well, but you need a left tackle to protect the quarterback. So Armarius Mims is a pick, and you're up with Green Bay.
And I think Green Bay is going to stick in the same kind of spot with the offensive line, and they need to figure out the long-term replacement to be behind Bakhtiari. And this is a guy, this is what we were talking about, right? We're doing this draft post Senior Bowl because some of our rankings have changed. And this is one of these guys that, to me, has shown up and provided a ton of value and has proven that I think that he can play. I think he sounded intelligent. I think he played exceptionally well outside of that day one. I think he dominated on days 2 and 3. And I'm going to take Patrick Paul, the tackle out of Houston here, to Green Bay. They found Zach Tom late. They've got the weapons. We've seen that he can play. You just got to solidify that offensive line. While I did think about a Kool-Aid McKinstry here if they move on from Jair Alexander and his antics and the things that he's doing. But I think the whole Jair Alexander thing is a little bit difficult to predict right now. If I'm going under the assumption he's still on the team. And if he's on the team, cool. That's great. I don't think you're ready to move on from Eric Stokes just yet. And I think that you try to figure it out. New defensive coordinator in town. Let's just protect Jordan Love, who had a really good rookie year.
Yeah, listen, I love Patrick Paul. He was a guy that, I liked, but I wasn't in love, and he really showed me something down in Mobile. Like he's a lot more. He moves a lot better than I thought. Heady kid, and you can't argue with 6'7" and those
those measurable
pterodactyl arms that he's got. So I think Patrick Paul is in the discussion for a first round pick. So I'm fine with this. And that leaves me up with Tampa, who has, they got tons of holes, man, and tons of problems. But a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, they got a lot of cap space. They need some help on the defensive side of the ball. They need some help on the offensive side of the ball. But to me, it's a no-brainer. With Ryan Jensen retiring, this is a home run spot for Jackson Powers Johnson. And you just plug him in there, and maybe he can. I know they still need a left guard, and they do have Robert Hainsey, I think, as the center on the roster. So worst comes to worst, if Jackson Powers Johnson becomes your right guard. And you're comfortable with running it back with Hainsey. If not, you have Jackson Powers Johnson on that interior, the best interior lineman in this draft, hands down. Perfect fit. They got time to address some of the other needs that they have on the defense side of the ball. But for now, JPJ, you're in Tampa Bay.
Yep. And now we go to the Arizona Cardinals, obviously in the first round. With the 4th pick, they took Marvin Harrison Jr. And I would not be lying to you if I'm tempted to take Brian Thomas Jr. and just double up here and just like super stacked loaded weapons. McBride, Harrison, Thomas would be insane. But this is a predictive draft here. I think that the value for the offensive line isn't here anymore, specifically for the Arizona Cardinals. But I think there is a ton of value at corner right now. And they do need help in the cornerback room. And so I'm going to take Kool-Aid McKinstry, the other corner out of Alabama, who I'm a big fan of his. I think he's got it. I think he's the top 4 corners in this draft are very, very top 5, I guess now after the Senior Bowl, are very, very hard to distinguish for me in Cooper DeJean, Nate Wiggins, Kool-Aid McKinstry. I'm forgetting his name. I took him. Terrion Arnold and
Quinyon
Mitchell. They are so difficult to distinguish because they're all excellent athletes and they're all so good at different aspects of corner. And this might be one of the better cornerback classes I've seen in a while. Like these guys just can ball. So I love this fit. Defensive minded head coach and Jonathan Gannon gets another weapon on that defense. And let's see what he can do.
Yeah. Listen, if Kool-Aid fell this far and he landed there, I don't think anybody would argue. And that leaves me up with Buffalo. Now, everybody and their grandmother is mocking or predicting a wide receiver here at round 1. But when I look at it, and I could easily take a guy like Trey Franklin or Brian Thomas and be completely content with it. But I'm looking at the unrestricted free agents on the defensive side of the ball. Daquan Jones, Leonard Floyd, Jordan Phillips, Tim Settle, AJ Epinesa, Poona Ford, Linval Joseph. They're all unrestricted free agents. Now, do I expect Buffalo to bring any of those back? Probably. Do I expect them to bring them all back? No. To me, I think they need another force another body on the inside to take some of the pressure away from Ed Oliver. And even though it might be a little bit redundant in their play skill, I'm going to say that the talent supersedes all that. And I'm going to go ahead and take Byron Murphy from Texas and plug a hole on the defensive line. Listen, he's not the big body, one tech that
He's not his
they still need. Yeah. But to me, I mean, T'Vondre Sweat is, listen, if you want to take T'Vondre Sweat here, I wouldn't argue with it either. But I just think the skills that Byron Murphy brings from the interior of the line, you just got a team that's absolutely ready to compete, still ready to compete. So they're gonna have to make some salary cap space, and I expect them to do so and bring some of these guys back. So plus a one tech you can get later on, so on and so forth. You're not going to get somebody who can really press the pocket vertically from the middle as well and attack the quarterback as well as Byron Murphy. To me, he's a home run here at 28. So you're up with Detroit.
Yep. I have the Detroit Lions, and they have to figure out something with the defense. Their offense is ready, in my opinion, to compete and to go win a Super Bowl. And you have to find a piece. You have to start fixing that defense. You have to do that. They have two of the best tackles in the NFL. They've got really, really good weapons. And I am tempted with getting like another wide receiver here, but there isn't like an X that's standing out for me. But Braylon Trice out of Washington and the ability to really be versatile on that defensive line, especially opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. And now you've got McNeil there as well with Trice. And now you've got a defensive line of guys that can be shifty, that you can move them around. You can throw amoeba fronts at the offensive line because all three of those guys are going to be able to play anywhere. They had Hutchinson, who I don't think has the body or the build to do it, taking reps on the inside. Well, if that's the plan, cool. Add another guy who can do that, who can play outside, who can play inside, who can stunt with Braylon Trice. I think if he falls this far, because I love Braylon Trice, this is a scary scenario for Detroit because now you've got three headhunters on that defensive line in Hutchinson, McNeil, and Trice, and they're going to give quarterbacks nightmares.
Yeah, no, I love the fit. And can you imagine Hutchinson opposite Trice? Oof, scary.
It's not a fun time for anybody playing against Detroit. This is the reality of it.
Yeah, and that leaves me up with Baltimore. Again, a team that I think can go a bunch of different ways. I'm assuming they're going to bring back Justin Matabuke. They better, but they also have some other holes on that defensive ball on the defensive side that they need to address. They need wide receivers bad too.
Yep.
So I'm torn here on what to do.
I'll tell you this: whichever one you take, if you take a wide receiver, I'm taking the other one.
Yeah, God, taking a guy. Let me see what I want to do here.
Like they lost.
Yeah, I know.
Pass catchers, man.
Listen, I'm telling you right now, it's between a wide receiver and it's between Darius Robinson because I really think that he's worked his way up. He could slide in. He could play that that 5 tech on the outside. He can also get at the quarterback in certain pass rush situations. I really like Darius Robinson, but I think that the need on the offensive at the wide receiver spot is going to be dire. So I'm going to go ahead and take Troy Franklin, the wide receiver from Oregon. Probably the best hands, best dropped catch rate out of anybody in college football. Fast as a whip. You can play him inside, outside, doesn't matter. He's tall. He needs to add needs to add a couple pounds, a little bit more functional play strength. But you line him up with a guy like Zay Flowers on that offense and Rashad Bateman and you got you got room for days, man. You got room for days for the underneath stuff with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, so on and so forth. So I'm tempted I was tempted to really think this might be a defensive pick, but to me, it's like a coin flip whether you address the defensive line or you address the wide receiver. And for me, the value for Troy Franklin in this offense is too high to pass up.
Yeah, they had the second best defense according to PFF, behind only the New York Jets, and it was by 0.2 points. I don't think the defense is the issue. Their offense, which again was great, had a problem with pass catching. And so you got to get a pass catcher. And speaking of which, I've already made the pick. The viewers can see it, and the listeners are going to hear about it now. I'm taking Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver out of LSU. Noted Tigo draft crush early on. If you've been a listener, you know I've been a big fan of Brian Thomas Jr. And now you're talking about a guy who's 6'4", just massive human being, 6'4", 205 pounds, who can beat you over the top. He's just faster than you. And you partner that up with a guy who can throw the ball literally out of the stadium. I think it makes too much sense. They got in the second round. Was it his second round pick or third round pick? Rashee Rice. He's second round pick, right?
Second round pick, yeah.
Yeah. Rashee Rice absolutely showed up this year and really played really, really well. Arguably, easily their best wide receiver all year. You partner him with, Brian Thomas Jr., just get the speed and the dynamicism, and now you've got a guy who you can try to emulate a replacement of Tyreek Hill and the speed that he brought. Not as fast, not as dynamic. I'm not trying to compare to that. I'm just saying you've got a really tall facsimile in terms of speed, and now you can bring back those double moves that you're missing because you don't have pass catchers to go do it.
Yeah. And that leaves me up with San Francisco. Yep. A team who's in pretty good shape. I think I'm going to go ahead and make sure that Darius Robinson gets taken in the first round because I think he's earned it. And on top of it, I don't think that I think the Chase Young experience and those bad knees that he has, I think that's going to kind of sail into the sunset. So Darius Robinson can come in and he can play on the outside. You can move him inside. He's more than capable of stepping in or subbing in for Eric Armstead. To me, like I said, there's probably not many guys who did more for themselves this week than Darius Robinson. He's a problem, and I think you put him on the field with Javon Hargrave and Nick Bosa and Randy Gregory and all these guys, and he's just another piece of the puzzle. A perfect segue to step in for Chase Young, who I don't think that they're going to bring back. So Darius Robinson is going to be the pick.
Yep.
And that leaves you with Carolina at pick 33, and then I'll take the Cleveland pick later.
Yeah. This is an interesting situation because you have to help. You really, really have to help Bryce Young. You got to help him, right? And there are options, you have to have the conversation of, do you get pass catchers because you traded more and the only guy that's catching balls there is Thielen, or do you get offensive line help? Because you need to protect him because he's just small and slight and he's not going to hold up to that much abuse. But do you get the wide receiver? I think you go and you get the wide receiver, and I'm going to get a guy that I'm a big fan of for them. And I think I'm going to take A.D. Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas. Just a good combination of size and speed. Give him a big target that he's going to be able to see over the offensive line because, he's like 4'11" with platform shoes on. So, but all jokes aside, I think A.D. Mitchell, he's just a burner. He's got the size and speed, and partnering him up with a specialist like Thielen doesn't have much left in him. You got to start replacing the cupboards there. And I think that's where you're going to have to go if you're Carolina. So A.D. Mitchell is the pick.
A.D. Mitchell to Carolina at 33. And that leaves me with the last pick of this mock draft, Cleveland Browns, who pick 55. Again, we're going to assume that a lot of things happen between picks 1 and 54. And I'm just going to address what I think is I'm going to give some love to a guy who earned it down at the Senior Bowl. I'm going to address a big need in the middle of that defense. And I'm going to take Peyton Wilson, the linebacker from NC State. I think that he's played his way. If he can show that he's healthy,
Yep.
and he's shown it for the past 2 seasons, he's stayed healthy. He's got a checkered history, in regards to injuries. If he, everything checks out well at the combine, this guy is worthy of the first off-ball linebacker taken in this draft. I mean, he just flies all over the field. He plays with ferocity. He's going to be 100+ tackle per season guy as long as he stays healthy. And you plop him right in there in the middle of that, Cleveland defense where they need some help. They need some off-ball linebacker help. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has been phenomenal, but you need something a little bigger, a little sturdy, a guy that can still move sideline to sideline, but can step up and shed blocks and help seal the middle of that defense. So I'm going to show some love to Peyton Wilson. I think off-ball linebacker in this area of the draft, 55, 60 is probably we're going to see the first one come off the board. So the fit for me is ideal. So Peyton Wilson's the pick.
Yep.
And that's our first round post Senior Bowl mock draft, plus a couple 2 extra additional picks for you. What'd you think, Tigo?
I think there's a lot of dynamic picks. I think that a lot of things have changed. Like, for example, Johnny Newton falling because of nothing except for like head coaching hires. Guys like Jackson Powers Johnson being bona fide first round picks, and Tyler Guyton in the first round, and Quinion Mitchell in the first round. And, a lot of things have shifted. Patrick Paul in the first round. A lot of things have shifted because of the Senior Bowl and obviously because of coaching hires. So it's interesting to see who's available in the second round, because if I'm being honest, I think the value in this draft is going to be in rounds 2 and 3. This draft is going to be remembered. I don't think for the guys in the first round, except for maybe the quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison Jr. But I think the guys who are going to really solidify themselves as NFL is going to be, the value is in the second and the third round. And so super interesting for this draft, because this draft is going to be wild. Because outside of the top 4 picks, so I think you can write them in stone. You can even maybe top 5 picks, but you can write them in stone. It is wild after that. It can literally go a million different directions. The first tackle didn't go off the board till 10.
Yeah, but we had 8 in the first round. How crazy is that?
Exactly. You know what I mean? It's just it's one of those things where it's just, there's so many things that can, this is going to be a really, really fun draft, because no one has any idea what anyone's going to do, because there's so much good talent.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, it's still early. It's still February. Like I said, the combine hasn't happened. Free agency hasn't happened. And the pro days haven't happened. So there's still going to be a lot of moving and shaking. But I thought it was important, or we thought it was important, to make sure we got a post Senior Bowl mock out to you. The next one's going to be, a little bit more juicy. Maybe we'll go into a 2-rounder or a 3-rounder even. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But this is it, man. This is draft season. And, we're up and running, man. I couldn't be happier. So, Tigo, what else you got going on that you want to tell the people about?
Not much, guys. Just make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're interested in Jets content, talking Jets with Tigo, that's really it. Just let's get talking about the draft. I want to see comments. I want to go back and forth with you guys. Tell me why I'm crazy and why you think I'm wrong, and I'll tell you why you're crazy and you're actually wrong. Let's do it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let's just, draft season is in way. Draft starts in mobile. Well, it happened. We're in it. It's full swing.
That's it. And listen, again, to reiterate what Tigo said, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications. It helps us out a bunch. We want to keep bringing you the best content possible. And to do so, we need your help to do it. So we move up the food chain in the YouTube algorithm. And so we can keep, getting more people involved and hearing what you guys have to say. So feel free to leave a comment. Let us know what you think. and we're sure to be doing a lot more of these as the season rolls around until April. So until next time, folks, that's Tigo. I'm Dom C. We're the Draft Dodgers. We'll see you soon.